You know that person, right? The one who seems to ace every single exam without even breaking a sweat? So, is it just genius? Well, not quite. Turns out it's usually a specific toolkit for learning, for focus, and for staying calm under pressure. And today, we're going to open up that toolbox.
First things first, let's talk about the one thing every single student faces, that intense pressure of a high-stakes exam. It's that universal feeling when it seems like absolutely everything is on the line.
I mean, have you ever felt this, that knot that just forms in your stomach right before a big test? It's a feeling that can derail even the most prepared student. We've all been there.
And these symptoms, they create this awful, vicious cycle. The physical stuff, like a rapid heartbeat, is distracting enough. But it's the psychological effects, the clouded thoughts, that nagging fear of failing that can truly lock you up. It can literally become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So before we can even begin to tackle anxiety, we have to build confidence. And that all starts with solving the first huge problem. How do we actually remember what we've studied? This is all about curing that dreaded forgetting curve. Now, the core tool here is something called spaced repetition. The idea actually goes way back to a psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus. He figured out that spacing out your reviews over time produces way stronger memories than just cramming everything in at once. It's all about working smarter, not just harder.
Okay, but let's be real. This is a 19th century theory. Does it hold up today? Well, a really fascinating study of first-year medical students using an app called Anki, it's a popular spaced repetition flashcard app, gives us a pretty clear answer. They track the performance of students who used it versus those who didn't. And the results? They were immediate and, honestly, pretty striking. On their very first major course exam, the students using Anki scored on average 6.4% higher than the ones who didn't.
And nope, this wasn't just a fluke. The pattern held up on this second exam too. The Anki users once again came out ahead, this time by 6.2%. But here's the kicker. The most stunning results came on the big year-end comprehensive exam. On that one, the Anki users scored nearly 13% higher. This is the real power of spaced repetition. It's not for short-term cramming, it's for building durable, long-term knowledge that sticks.
But look, building that kind of knowledge requires so much more than just memorizing facts. It demands a deep understanding. And that is what truly separates the good students from the great ones. So how can you test if you've really understood something? This is where the Feynman technique comes in, named after the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman. It's a beautifully simple, four-step process. First, you just write down what you know. Second, and this is the magic part, you try to explain it in super simple terms, like you're talking to a kid. This step is brutal because it exposes exactly where your understanding is weak. Then you review, fill in those gaps, and finally you test it by teaching it to someone else. This quote by the philosopher Mortimer Adler just perfectly captures the whole spirit of the technique. Think about it. Complexity and jargon are often just a mask for a lack of real understanding. If you can't say it simply, you probably don't know it well enough. All right, so we've got tools for memory and for understanding, but none of that matters one bit if you can't actually sit down and concentrate. In our world of constant distraction, focus is a superpower. So let's look at the playbook for it. I just love this analogy. Think of it this way. The Pomodoro technique, with its short little sprints, is your ignition system. It helps you beat procrastination and just get started. But deep work, those long, uninterrupted blocks of focus, that's the mastery engine. That's where you produce your highest quality thinking.
See, this is all about using the right tool for the right job. Feeling totally overwhelmed and just need to get started on something? That is a perfect job for Pomodoro. But if you're tackling a complex proof or writing a big essay, you need a deep work block. The best students don't just pick one. They use both, strategically.
So let's start putting all these pieces together, because it's not just about having the tools in the toolbox. It's about the mindset and the system that connects them all. And this is where we start to see the real secrets of top performers emerge.
This comparison is just so revealing. The average student spends most of their time just passively reading, trying to memorize facts. But the top performer, sometimes called a topper in certain education systems, they flip this completely. Their goal is deep understanding, and they spend a whopping 70% of their time on active practice, like solving problems and testing their own knowledge. And this brings us right back to that initial problem, anxiety. How do top performers handle the pressure? Well, they reframe it. This quote from Kobe Bryant just perfectly encapsulates that mindset. The pressure isn't a threat, it's fuel. It's an opportunity to rise.
So, how can you actually do that? A study on high school students found a remarkably simple and effective tool. Just a 10-minute writing exercise right before an exam. It works like a pattern interrupt for that whole anxiety spiral.
The study actually tested two different approaches. The first one, expressive writing, is just about getting your worries out of your head and onto the paper so they stop cycling around. The second, stress reappraisal, is maybe even more powerful. You actively reframe your physical symptoms, writing about how that faster heartbeat is actually your body getting ready to perform at its best. And the impact of this simple 10-minute intervention? It was incredible. For students from low-income backgrounds who often feel the highest stakes, the course failure rate was cut in half. That just shows you how much our performance is tied to managing our psychological state.
So the key takeaway here is really clear. These techniques, spaced repetition, Feynman, deep work, and stress reappraisal, they aren't just a list of random hacks. They form a coherent, interconnected system for performing under pressure. And the most important part, they are all learnable habits. Which really leaves us with one final question to think about. Looking at all this evidence, at this systematic toolkit for success, what do you think? Are top performers simply born with some innate talent, or are they made, piece by piece, by the systems and habits they built? The evidence really seems to suggest it's a game that anyone can learn how to play.